Is Accra too underdeveloped to be this expensive? I came across this tweet the other day that said Accra is too underdeveloped to be this expensive. And as someone who's been living in Accra for the past 7 months, I agree. It's not so much about the underdeveloped, because underdeveloped can be relative in some ways. For example, having high-rise buildings or luxury malls don't necessarily mean a place is developed. But what I agree with here is that you don't necessarily get the value for what you are paying for. Prices are not making sense. Oftentimes things are priced in USD, even like housing. How are places charging $1,800 a month for rentals when you go outside, the road's not even paved? Or there's gaping holes in the road. So things like that. Or the cost of food. Cost of food is so much more expensive than I thought. The price fluctuations at the market, even things like tomatoes. Tomatoes are a staple in Ghanaian cuisine, and yet the price for those sometimes is so expensive. What is the reason? So I would say, as someone who is a returnee, as someone who grew up in a North American city, it's natural to make comparisons, especially around cost of things. I don't think it makes sense to necessarily expect the same things, but it's getting to a point where the prices of things in Accra are more expensive than major cities like New York City, London. These are like finance hubs, business hubs, entertainment hubs. They're a hub for everything. And the prices in Accra are the same, if not more. So what is the reason for that? That's confusing. This is all in my opinion, but I do see other people having this conversation. And I think this conversation has existed for a while. But now that I'm actually living here and seeing it firsthand and experiencing it firsthand, I'm like, what are you paying for? Why are things so expensive? I remember I paid $200. I don't know why I paid that much money, but I did. 230 cities for tilapia. Or I think it was 250 actually for the grilled tilapia. That to me felt very expensive. One day it was 180 and the next day it was 250. Anyways, it was good though, but still that seems so expensive. So whether it's housing, Airbnb, so like a short-term accommodation, Airbnb prices are outrageous. I've seen anywhere from like $50 to $150 a night. And these are for studio units, not even like a 2-bedroom, even a 1-bedroom. These are studios and I see them priced at that much. Food, transportation. Try to do your errands with Uber. You'll easily spend 200 cities in a day, probably even more. I think that's even low, depending on where you're coming from. Daily life is quite costly. And what is the reason? And I don't think it's always been at this level, because even when I came to Ghana like several years ago, I would say things weren't at this price. I think the prices just continue to fluctuate to a point where now, what's the explanation for some of the costs of goods here? Housing is shocking for me, the cost. And not only just the price per month, but the fact that you have to pay 12 months in advance, 24 months in advance, 36 months in advance. Who can afford that? Even if you earn foreign income. I'm trying to be very careful not to suggest that, oh, Ghana should be at the same standard as the US or Canada. That's not what I'm saying. I just want to know why the prices are the same as what they are there if you're not necessarily getting the same quality or the same value. I've seen a lot of discourse talking about how it's because of people like myself, returnees, the diaspora, we're coming back and we're the reason why the prices are going up. And I don't think I necessarily agree with that, because at the end of the day, people are choosing to price things the way they are. I think that in some ways, yes, because diaspora returnees are coming in and maybe paying these prices because, oh, maybe we'll convert it to our currency from where we're from and say, oh, it's not as expensive or whatnot. I see that a lot with hair videos. People will say, this was only $36. This was only $18. So I can see how things like that might drive up costs, but some stuff just still doesn't make sense. I'm gonna go back to this matcha example. Why is matcha being priced at 150 cities? I genuinely want to know the reason. Is it because you're importing matcha and this is what it costs? You're getting really premium matcha, like a high grade matcha? Truthfully, I don't think that's all that it is. I think there's probably just having a really high profit margin. And I don't know, like who benefits from this sort of pricing, right? It's not the general population. And people will make the argument, maybe I'm not the right target market. Maybe it's out of my tax bracket. Okay, sure. But if the target market is now even saying that the prices are more than where they come from, who is it for, essentially? And I got a lot of comments on the video that I made, and a lot of people are in agreement saying, yeah, they noticed the same things. Or I saw another video where a woman was saying she's basically hemorrhaging money. So is Accra too underdeveloped to be this expensive? expensive. I think it depends on what you are basing it on, what you're comparing it to. But I think for the fact that there's not stable electricity, there's not consistent water, there's not paved roads, there's a lot of basic things that are not there, and the prices of goods and services are just not matching up. So developed, it depends on what you're measuring it. What's your measuring stick for developed? But when those things aren't there, it makes it hard to justify these sorts of prices for things. Because I remember I was staying in an Airbnb and it was quite costly. And you step outside, there's open gutters everywhere. I wanted to go for a little walk. There's holes in the middle of the sidewalk. So I don't know, what are you paying for? That's my question. And is it the diaspora? Is it the returnees? I don't think it's our fault. And I'm not saying all this to talk badly about Accra or to say negative things about Ghana. This is just my experience. This is just my observations. But there's so much potential for Accra. Whenever I would tell people I'm Ghanaian, the way they would get so excited because they wanted to go to Ghana. So there's a real interest in people going to Accra, visiting Ghana. But I think we also need to be mindful of what we're welcoming people into. I would say Ghana and maybe West Africa in general has really good PR. Amazing. But I don't think you necessarily get what you think you're gonna get. And you could make the argument, why are you coming in with these expectations or assumptions? Okay, sure. But I think it's also the way Accra is being positioned. I think it's the images you see online. I think it's the story being told. And I think it's a great story, but I think we can also back it up with good infrastructure, electricity, good roads, things like that. I think all of these things are important, not just for people coming into the country though, but for Ghanaian citizens, for people living in Accra. So all that is to say, I think it's expensive. I will say that I think Accra is very expensive, and I've had the privilege of going to places like New York, like London, Paris, Montreal, Amsterdam. And even then, those places, these big tourist hubs, I don't think the prices were like this. I think they were more reasonable. Why are things costing the same amount of money in places where people make 10 times the income? I don't know. What is the reason? I'm curious. There's so much potential, and I would love to see it realized. I know I'm not the first person to talk about this. I know I'm not the last person to talk about this. I may not necessarily be the best person to talk about this either, but this is just my experience, what I've seen, my observations through conversations, and the cost is high. The cost is high, and fine. I think if you were paying premium prices, oh my gosh, don't get me started on the word luxury. You see that word everywhere you go. Luxury, everything's luxury. What is luxury about having an Airbnb that is in East Legon, but you step outside, there's holes in the sidewalk? There's a sidewalk. Is that luxury? If I see the word luxury again, oh my gosh. Anyways, the target market is complaining. Yes, I guess so. We are. I am. The target market is complaining. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to have these conversations. I will see comments saying, oh, negative content, or go back to Canada, or blah, blah, blah. But it's a problem. It's a problem because the average person, I think the average person earns between 2,000 to 5,000 cities, something like that. And so who's paying 160 cities for matcha? Is Accra expensive? I think so. Yes. Let me know what you think. If you're someone born and raised in Accra, or you're a returnee like myself, do you find it expensive? And if you do, how do you manage? How do people manage in Accra, especially making the average salary? And many people make way less. I've heard this thing where they're like, Ghanaians are magicians because it's like magic. How are you able to manage? As someone who is navigating the system and learning the system, it is really difficult. The prices are not right. Let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next one.